Everywhere GBS.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Well, welcome to this broadcast on GBS TV. Of course, we're here on the headquarters of GBS TV, and we are talking about politics of transition tonight. Well, it has been an election, and what an election it has been. Now, on the Insight tonight, we ask you, what are the implications of your choice as a Kenyan voters? We are here to adequately dissect into the issues that actually surrounding the elections of 2022. And of course, there are a lot of issues, including the killings and injuries that happened on IBC workers. We are also here to delve into a conversation where we are also going to look into other issues like the petitions that are underway. That is the looming showdown at the Supreme Court. What are actually the cases around it? What are the things that actually are going, the grounds that Azimio will give in the petitions? We're looking into these issues, and of course all other trends that are affecting the elections. Of course, Raila says the elections are null and void, amongst many other issues, even the issues of the commissions and the Chebukati. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Insight, where we talk about politics tonight. I don't do this alone, of course. In the Insight tonight we have different political guests, and my first guest is George Ndawa. George Ndawa is a political commentator, and we also have Eric Naibei. Eric Naibei is an advocate of the High Court, and my third guest is Peter Nelson Kamau Wamboi. Peter Nelson Kamau Wamboi is an economist, and of course is also joining us on the show tonight. We also have PDG Anthony Masu, PDG himself. PDG is the president of the downtrodden. He calls himself the hoi polloi, the Secretary General of Vijana Economic Front. Also an analyst is here with us on the Insight tonight. And gentlemen, there's a lot of issues actually that are surrounding the elections of 2022. They call it the politics of transition. And I want us to delve into these issues, quite a number of them. But the first question actually that I would like us to delve into is that a state-backed presidential contender, that is Raila Odinga, has lost to a non-establishment candidate.
That is controversial, especially with the kind of results we have. Any political professional can tell you that you cannot beat the state in a peaceful contest. The state is a vehicle, an engine that has been drafted and crafted for ages. It doesn't lose to any person in a peaceful contest. In fact, the state can be beaten, but in a violent contest. That is if you negotiate the monopoly of violence, that is the military, and they decide to stand down, and people take power and control of the government machinery through violent means in a revolution. So, Uhuru-backed presidential candidate, in quotes, Raila Odinga, lost to a state-backed presidential candidate, William Ruto. Thank you, Eugene.
What do you mean by saying that Ruto was backed by the state, but Uhuru backed Ruto?
First of all, it will be very difficult to sell a hustler narrative propaganda if Mr. Ruto is actively executing his roles as the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. Mm-hmm. And using that line of thinking, mm-hmm. we see a deliberate machination mm-hmm. in which Ruto is given a free passage mm-hmm. to the vote-rich Mount Kenya region mm-hmm. even before the second term of the Jubilee government takes shape, and before long, he has taken dominance of the region, and the political father of the area, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, has taken a backseat and is campaigning for Raila in Kisumu, where Raila already has votes. So we know what happened. We need to put these things out there,
Okay.
so that people know them even as this government takes shape. What we have is Uhuru government for 20 years. Moi said that Kanu will rule for 100 years. Maybe we'll be lucky to be alive and see it happen.
Okay. George, I don't know what you think about this.
Well, in the first place, I would think it's a narrative that is relayed out there that Raila was a state-backed candidate. Because Raila on his own has stood against odds of some wonderfully backed dictatorial systems in this country, and we know that during the times that Raila was fighting the dictatorial government, it was even his life in line. So I don't see anything that I would say was going to make a picture of a state. But you see, Uhuru is not a state. Uhuru is an individual like any other person.
Okay.
So is Ruto.
Okay. Well, Mr. Lebei, because you're an advocate of the High Court, I hope I introduced you as such. Well, maybe you can tell us what really the state is. Because we are saying that Ruto was a non-established, was not backed by the establishment, that is the system, the so-called deep state. But Raila obviously was backed by Uhuru Kenyatta, which most people believe that is the face of the state. So what is the state first? What is a deep state? And do you believe that Raila was backed by a deep state?
Well, I think first, what I would say is that this election has proved that what we call deep state doesn't exist. The state is as deep as we imagine. And we've seen an electoral process that that has largely been controlled by the citizens themselves, not the state the way we imagined. But what my two friends are saying is, to me, turns out to be an interesting twist, because the narrative before August 9th, 8th was that Raila is going to be assisted and is going to be pushed by the state to become president. Now, after the election, now it is coming out clear that there was no such thing. There was no deep state. There was no state involved. Practically, from what we saw, shortly before we entered August, we saw a clear participation by government in Raila's campaigns as opposed to Ruto's.
Okay.
We saw government officers campaigning for him, cabinet secretaries campaigning for him, and also, of course, from 2018 to 2022, we've seen Raila enjoy government privileges, including vehicles, including choppers, including even using Air Force One at one point. So it is not really true to now say that Raila was not a state candidate.
So beyond reasonable doubt, Raila Odinga was a state candidate.
He was.
I don't know what to believe about this, Nelson.
Well, I think there are two perspectives to this. And my colleague here said it very clearly. There is someone who was backed by President Uhuru Kenyatta, but President Uhuru Kenyatta did not release the so-called deep state or the state machinery to do the same campaign as would be expected at the level of a state for Raila Amolo Odinga.
Okay.
So I do not believe that the government worked for Raila Odinga because he boarded the military chopper once when he was hosting the president in Kisumu. I believe that President Uhuru Kenyatta could not even transfer his backyard a substantial amount, proportion of the votes in his backyard to his favorite candidate. So as we've alluded here, there is no deep state when it comes to a democratic process, like the electoral process we are just concluding. If there was, then there would have been significant impetus and synergy from various government arms trying to force issues with the candidate of their choice. And as you've seen even in the announcement of the winner by the Electoral Commission Chair, Chebukati, you saw him saying that despite being under duress here and there, they ended up doing what they considered to be their constitutional duty that they took oath of office to execute. And the kind of intimidation he talked about, surely you wouldn't expect that to be the deep state we were always made to wait for. I do not believe the deep state, if it is there, worked for Raila Odinga.
Oh, okay. You guys generally don't believe that there is a deep state, but generally there is a...
That's the contested, Eugene. You cannot make such an absolute statement. And just for the nitty-gritty that my friend Eric has just mentioned, as citizen of Kenya, even me, if Uhuru decided that he wants to do some little PR show, he can carry me into the state chopper. Anaambia bana president ya wanyonge kuja na wewe mtu ya kawaida pia aingie kwa chopper ya serikali. You see that?
Okay.
Eugene, let me give you something that the Khoikhoi, you know them, the Khoisan, wale watu wa hunters and gatherers. If they wanted to get water during the days of drought, they would capture a monkey. They would lay a trap and capture a monkey. And this monkey was fed on salt. Okay? So never confused. Don't think that these people love this monkey so much. No, they're feeding it salt. They are precious salt. Because once the monkey has eaten salt to its fill, it will become so thirsty. It will go into the forest in its secret places where there are very succulent tubers, and then gather those tubers, and then the hunters will take back. So if Raila was given some little salt, never confuse these things.
Okay.
We must keep our eyes open.
Okay. Let me start this conversation in another way. Was these elections credible and transparent as we maybe according to your own opinion, was it credible, was it transparent?
I want to use a very simple example that happened. I can't remember which day it was, but I think it was the second day of the counting and all tallying of votes, when the figures were rolling down the TVs, and they were rolling like for quite a long time. And if we, any one of us who was very keen was adding those figures, and then at some point for more than 15 hours it went to a standstill. So what they were relaying were only MCAs and MPs stuff, you know what I'm saying? And you know in Kenya, election is not even about the MCAs and MPs.
Yes.
It's about the president, because even the MPs, they hang on the coats of the so-called presidents for them to get into the seats. So at that time that the figures were stopped, I mean, what was happening? Were they not counting for more than one day? So then, if you say it was not opaque, if you say it was transparent, then what's transparency? Because there are some of us who rely on the TV. That's what we wanted to see.
So
But you see, it wasn't, let me say, it wasn't any close to transparent and verifiable as per the Constitution.
Mr. Nobe.
Eugene, this election was free, fair and transparent. And the main reason is this time round, IBC portrayed and published all results in the portal, especially Form 34S. What the media was required to do was to add and to communicate to Kenyans. However, Kenyans also had the opportunity to access the same documents, the same results, and to do their own addition. So that for my colleague to say that because at some point the media stopped broadcasting the presidential results, that is again another political issue which raised eyebrows, because it is believed that shortly after Atwoli and some other people visited the Royal Media Services Sterling Center, the process was stopped. And it was stopped because of a given political reason that that was supposed to favor somebody. Otherwise, apart from that, what IBC did was what it was mandated to do.
Okay.
Yes, because from 2017, you remember 2017, one of the issues that was raised in the Supreme Court was the fact that IBC, the returning officer, announced the presidential results before receiving and before announcing from at least 10,000 polling stations. This time round, IBC received, published, and made all information public until the last minute. So for us to say that it was not transparent, I think we are not being honest. On credibility, I think again that is something that we can still do our own math and conclude that this was verifiable, this was credible, and this was free and fair. We have not seen instances of people being caught stuffing ballot boxes, ballot papers. We've not seen violence. We've not even seen an equal number of election petitions from the positions of MCAs, members of parliament, governors. This time round, almost all candidates are conceding defeat. Why? Because it was free, fair, and transparent. That is my position.
Nelson, are we making a progress in our democratic space generally, matters elections?
Eugene, there are questions that were raised by the Supreme Court in 2017 nullification of that election, the first ballot that we cast in August. Some of those issues have not been properly addressed. Nonetheless, the process this time was more transparent. There was improvement, but still left room for manipulation and vandalism of the whole process. We must agree that a few years ago, elections in Kenya, rigging used to be manual. It used to be on the ballot. It used to be in extremely analog manner. But nowadays, rigging has proven to be digital and extremely advanced and well choreographed. You saw instances where, for example, the Azmir Brigade flagged and frogged out an IBC together with an unidentified person who was alluded to have been complicit to manipulation of the so-called final Form 34As. And they kicked the person out of Bomas, and IBC themselves acknowledged that was not their staff. What was that person doing at the National Tallying Center? So I believe rigging, if there was, or if there was manipulation, or if there was loss of credibility for the whole electoral process, it was not at casting the ballot, it was not at counting the ballots, it was at tallying. And the other dependence on the finality of Form 34As, about 46,000 of them, while the whole spectrum of documents was uploaded online. I want you to tell me how many people, including fully-fledged colleges like the University of Nairobi School of Mathematics or Economics, can assemble a group of students, about 1,000 of them, to tally those forms and give Kenyans results in just under 3 or 4 days. The fact that they were put all out there does not mean that we all have capacity to tally those results and tell ourselves what there is. If what is online is not what is reported, we are not able to tell. There are instances cited where the numbers announced by none other than Madame Cherera herself, in terms of valid votes for all candidates, exceeded the valid votes cast, less of spoiled votes, said to have been cast in a particular polling stations. So there are questions, there were gaps for rigging, and I believe they were abused.
Okay. Mr. Anthony,
Yes.
what is generally your observation in the elections 2022 coverage?
One thing I would love to tell the Serikal side at this point is that free, fair, and transparent is one phrase. There's a reason why we input each of those words in there, which means if it is free and transparent but it is not fair, off. If it is free and fair but it's not transparent, in this case that we had was free and transparent, but not fair. Okay? You know, Wakili, you know a little bit more about fairness than I do. At least you are in the legal sector. What I'm saying is this. First of all, if close to 100,000 people from Kisumu County would wake up and go and vote in Governor Nyong'o, but not care to vote in Raila, that is very suspicious. Because first of all, as you enter the polling booth, you are given 6 slips. These slips are property of the IEBC. You cannot leave that polling booth or that polling center with these slips. If it is a presidential leaf and you don't want to cast it, it has to be found somewhere. IEBC are given extra boxes. They have to put it there and label and say, these are 100,000 people from Kisumu County, these are 50,000 people from Kwale County. They don't want to cast a presidential ballot. There are also people in central Kenya who walked to the polling center and cast ballot for president and did not cast a ballot for any other candidate, which means the total presidential tally by far exceeds the tally for these other candidates in their respective positions. What we want to see is this. The IBC must bring a bucket of these ballots and say, these 500,000 people from central Kenya, they decided not to vote for an MCA, but they were given this list because you must be given the 6 leaves. They were given the leaves, and here they are, the papers, the ballot papers are here, and they did not vote them. We have kept them aside. Which, if such a situation arises where people are revolting deliberately to vote for these candidates and only vote for president, say in central Kenya, it's 500,000 people. That's such a large number. That would be news. So as we go to the Supreme Court, these are some of the issues that I want the IEBC to come out clearly and address. Another issue that should be regarded so keenly that we don't look at. Remember, there are some IEBC officials that died in this process. What we are looking at is a situation where we are depending on the returning officer to return the forms and upload them to the website. This means if this officer is captured, because as we sit at the returning center in Bomas, we don't even know where this particular officer is. So if I was the candidate, I go and capture Mr. George here before he even uploads the forms, and I give him my own version of the form. And remember that the agents are required to sign, but their signature is not, it is not what makes that thing valid. It can be valid because they are often say, the agent ran away. He did not sign, so we cannot stop the process because the agent ran away. So the agent is not mandated to sign. So anyone can capture any returning officer at any point in this electoral cycle. And that is why there are disparities. Even Mr. Chebukati cannot explain how the total number of votes tallied exceed 100%. Provided we have a common denominator. Hiyo hesabu kidogo watu waelewe. If we have a common denominator of all votes cast, it should not exceed 100%.
And that even begs the question, and I would like to pose the question to you, Mr. Naibei, is that when the agents have to sign for it to be for it to be valid, do we have is there a set of signs, of signatures from those agents that if another person signs, then we can say that this is not the valid form that was signed by agent this?
Now, what he said is correct. Agents do not have to sign the forms. If they choose not to sign, the forms are still valid. But what is important about these forms is that there were security features. These forms were special. And it is not easy for somebody, like my colleague wants to put it, to capture a returning officer and to force him to upload different forms that do not emanate from IEBC. These forms had different security features. There is a way they were configured so that you could not scan a form that did not come from IEBC through that gadget. So I want to believe that yes, we are sad that that happened to the returning officer, but also we remember Chebukati saying that there are officials who are taken away from the Bomas Sterling Center, and up to date, we don't know where they are. So it is an unfortunate thing that we hope justice will be will be delivered to the families and even to those who are still captured. We hope that everything shall go well. But for these forms, I believe that the security features were sufficient. Those gadgets were configured such that you could not scan any foreign document using it. Yeah.
Eugene, just before they proceed, I think that is too crazy to say. We're in a country where we don't even have a peek at the servers of 2017 elections. Why? Because even that configuration was manipulated. That is the state where we are in right now.
Gina, can I just chip in and say this? We are not coming to witness Kenyan election for the first time. And even for us to reach to a point where IEBC was created, there was the country was going haywire because of these arguments of some legal points in the system, whereby you stress so much on that legal part, and you don't want that legal part also to allow it to be seen to be good. Because you may do, we may say, we want it to be verifiable, we want it to be free and fair. But if that freeness and fairness doesn't seem in the eyes of people to be, despite the fact that you can raise a lot of legal things that this is required and this is supposed to be, the hearts of people know. In my village, night runners can run in the night and people are sleeping in their rooms. In the day, they know who was running in the darkness. So this is the same thing. The night runners are here. They are just running, and there is also a choreography of propaganda that has been created, especially in this election of 2022. Listen. When we started campaigning 4 years ago, it's we because we are all Kenyans. So I'm not saying everyone, but we started campaigning 4 years ago. There is a tone that was created, which was creating a picture like, oh man, let us maintain peace. Let's maintain peace. We came up to the IBC Tallying Center for the first time in my life. I'd seen a choir brought from a camp, a camping choir brought into such a place. Do you know what they were trying to prove? They knew that they were creating an environment for violence, so they kept singing peace, peace, peace. Look at it this way. Have you ever been invited into a wedding and the wedding people tell you when you are coming in, and they tell you, please come and please maintain peace. People will come in their high heels because they know definitely peace is there. So why did we stress so much in peace when there was no war? And we knew very well that even in our previous elections, the Wananchi themselves were queuing and voting. Only the people who are creating chaos are the police who are throwing tear gas at people who are expressing their feelings.
I get your point, Mr. George.
Yeah.
Well, but there's something that actually comes up, a question that all this begs, and that is about the Kriegler Commission that was formed post 2007 post-election violence to look into the electoral offenses and issues, and of course come up with recommendations. And my question to you, Kamau, do you believe that we have made steps democratically since the recommendations were made by the Kriegler Commission?
Over time and continually, we have worked so hard to violate every set of rules that were meant to improve our democratization process. To the extent that, for example, the process that was followed in 2022 was not envisaged by the Kriegler Commission to be so digital as of today, then it is quite clear that we cannot keep going back to rules and guidelines that were made before then, including the law, because of small things the law knows not. And so we cannot keep trying to tag every small malpractice that we are accused of to the law. Or the law does not require Form 34A to be signed by this because it has then security feature. To the extent that agents are not required to sign this, and to the extent that we know Azimio presidential candidate did not have agents in the strongholds of the opponents, some of them alluded or alleged, and I would like to use the word alleged, to have been bought off. To the extent that the presidential vote of the winning candidate, William Samoei Ruto, were higher than those of other contenders at county level by over 100,000 votes in certain counties in his stronghold, especially in Mount Kenya and the Rift Valley, to the extent that the votes of the opponent, the lead opponent, Raila Amolo Odinga, were less than those of other county level contenders in his backyard, in his stronghold, to the extent that now we have commissioners decrying the opaqueness or translucency of the process, to the extent that we all saw what happened on our national TV. And the only explainer my colleague Naibe is talking about is that someone visited Citizen TV at night. You know, I cannot say that we have worked so hard to implement the recommendations of the Kriegler Commission. What I can say is we have worked so hard to navigate them. In fact, to the extent that it feels like the much campaigning that started a long time ago was to validate what would happen at this point. Case in point, how do you campaign for 4 years only to have a gap of 200,000 votes with someone who has campaigned for 4 months?
Well, quite an interesting question that you have posed there. I don't know who to whom, but of course I believe Naibe will answer that. Well, gentlemen, we're going for a short break. Of course, we're coming right back. Of course, 211 there is our SMS line. You can continue contacting us. Of course, we let us get to engage at GBS TV Africa at Eugene Ochieng Kwach. Here we are talking about the politics of transition. Well, we are going for a short break and we'll be right back.
GBS.
Thank you and welcome again. And you are, of course, we are on the inside again, and we are looking into the issues of the transition. And gentlemen, thank you so much for staying with us. Well, we're talking about the issues of elections, and there's an issue about Wafula Chebukati. Wafula Chebukati has, for another time, postponed elections in Kakamega and Mombasa on the seats of gubernatorial positions, I mean. Some believe that his reasoning is quite a Trojan horse. It's quite deceptive, that there is even some reasons behind him deciding to postpone the gubernatorial elections for Mombasa and Kakamega. Let me get to hear from you, Mr. George, first.
Wafula Chebukati, I would say, was a time bomb that was placed in IEBC from the onset. I don't know which gods or godfathers were behind Chebukati. Do you remember during the interviews, Chebukati was the last guy. He was leading from the tail. And the guys who performed well in that interview never got it. So when we are messing, when we are seeing all the mess that are created by, that guy is a cool liar. Have you seen a liar whose hard eyes are on the screen like this and it's just lying? That is Wafula Chebukati. That guy is a mess. Let me tell you in simple words. Because since Wafula Chebukati began running IEBC, there is no time that we had ever had an election without complaints. Until right now, he's bringing us the choir people to keep our souls cool. So you see, what I'm seeing with him is we just need to have some strong evidence. We need to jail that guy forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anthony.
Well, the postponement of the elections. Let me start with that. First of all, I'm very suspicious of the reasons that are behind this. Because right now I'm following the campaigns in Kakamega. And there is this propaganda now being pushed to say, this is the government, don't be out of government. So it is obvious that the candidate that was going to lose terribly is now going to win. And that I can assure you. And in Mombasa, which is a very strategic location, strategic in this sense, Uhuru Kenyatta in his government opened up the East African community. We have countries like Congo, which are landlocked and are significant traders in this region. The port of Mombasa, with its improved road network, is going to be a major commercial hub in Eastern Africa and Africa at large. Someone who is very interested in controlling this hub is very much behind the process of postponing these elections, because IEBC should have verified the process of producing these ballot papers. There should be no errors. If there are errors, first of all, we raised concerns. You had us in some show before the elections, and we raised concerns about why IEBC was outsourcing everything. And one person said that it is because we don't trust ourselves to do this job. But even if we were to outsource these things, at least there should be someone supervising the entire process to ensure that there are no errors. We have been in worse situations in the past, even with the ECK, but we have never had a situation where errors in the ballot papers could strategically occur in one of the 3 or 4 major cities in the country. It is unthinkable. There is something fishy behind it. Chebukati, well, he was not under pressure, you could see. Because it seems there are some elements in this country that are given him the peace of mind that no matter what the strategy is right, whatever you say, you will be protected and you will be safe. If you look at him, he cuts the image of a man who was handling a very smooth process. It was like he was handling a dinner, because he looks very healthy, he looks very lively, he looks very jolly. And to me, it is criminal to look that way in a process that was so stressful.
Okay, quite interesting. Let me begin with the next one.
I totally feel my colleague's sentiment and where he's coming from, because after 44.6 billion shillings, this is not the outcome we expected, and I speak as a very pained taxpayer. This process, the outcome is not akin to one we've spent 44.6 billion shillings. There needed to have been a better strategy of convincing Kenyans that a certain preferred candidate of the system or not of the system or out of the system, garnered the requisite votes that we are being told they both garnered. Case in point, and to reiterate my friend's sentiment here, Wafula Chebukati went ahead and had the unfortunate mix-up of the ballots due to lack of due diligence and to some extent negligence from the side of the IEBC. Because you remember, this is a team that has even flown out to do the monitoring of printing of ballots and all that. Then two strategic cities come back with the confused ballots, and you wonder whose per diem should be refunded, or whose per diem should we require a refund on, or even salaries, because that was work poorly done. Then strategically and with no sufficient explainer, we are being told that elections are being suspended because of intimidation and whatnot. Wafula Chebukati cannot tell us who is this being intimidated, who is this missing. In a commission of thousands of employees, anybody can come up with cliche, we are being intimidated. After all, it's not the government candidate that won. Both William Ruto and Raila Odinga look like they are from government. There's a reason why William Ruto did not resign for 4 years of acrimonious relationship with his boss, because he continued being the actual system while demonizing his chief opponent, Raila Amolo Odinga, as the system candidate. He did not resign because he has ended up achieving what he envisaged he would, reaping the benefits of the system. And this has been seen with the confusion, which is obviously premeditated from the side of Chebukati, and for which I would say that we lost Kivuito before someone could be held accountable. And then the last commission, headed by a gentleman from Northeastern, that was Isaac Hassan. We lost him before he could be held accountable. Then we lost Chiloba before he could be held accountable. We are not going to have democratic elections in Kenya, and the electoral process will remain questionable to the extent of the Supreme Court appeals until when we begin holding people legally and professionally responsible for their mistakes. If Chebukati resigns today and he is the head of a board, like Chiloba is now the CEO of Communications Authority of Kenya, then we are rewarding rewarding incompetence and corruption. Yes.
Quite interesting. Let me just ask you also this question as you delve into the same one, that some people believe and hold to the notion that having to suspend Nairobi, Mombasa and Kakamega gubernatorial positions, which is believed traditionally to be strongholds for Raila Amolo Odinga, there was some underlying issues there that perhaps is not brought out to us and we cannot see. There is something that is being played. What do you think generally about it? And is it now time that we hold people like Chebukati accountable, even if it's not Chebukati, but people who are involved in these electoral malpractices?
I don't think that these postponements were strategic or meant to benefit a given political candidate, because the reasons have been given and they are clear. What my colleagues are not saying is that this decision was made by IEBC as a commission, not Chebukati himself in the first place. The decision to postpone Mombasa and Kakamega was made just before the general election day. And it was made by the entire commission. If we are to apportion blame, let's blame the entire commission, including the commissioners and the secretariat led by the CEO. This second postponement of now I think 2 days before today, that one again was, as per Chebukati's statement, is occasioned by security issues which we cannot downplay. We saw what happened in Bomas. If you saw how Chebukati was whisked out of that podium, how he was pushed away, you can't really say that he is not honest in saying that their lives are in danger and those of his junior staff. So I believe that the postponement was occasioned by circumstances beyond Chebukati's control, and we cannot blame Chebukati as an individual, yet this decision was made by the commission long even before the...
Yes.
You know, some people built a desert.
Let me get from Masu first.
Some people built a desert and then they called it peace. They're called the Romans. They would come, they would make the worst living conditions for everyone. But then, provided you could be bullied into being silent, then you'd be peaceful. If we are to be convinced that these decisions are commission's decisions, as we are told, then Chebukati must also not stand in front of Kenyans and announce presidential results without the concurrence of other commissioners with who they are in the same commission with. It should be the decision of the commission to announce the result. But in this case, we even had a battalion of very smart lawyers telling us that, you know, these other commissioners don't have to sign, this is only Chebukati, which means we have entrusted an individual with so much powers that he can actually veto decisions in this commission. And I believe these strategic postponements are vetoed decisions by Chebukati once again to manipulate these things to a certain political outcome. So we are not going to stay in a desert and then be told that we are peaceful. It is, of course we are peaceful. Why? Because we are hungry. This is wanyonge tunaumia.
Okay, I get to Masu. You had an issue before?
Yes, the commission that my colleague here, Bay, claims to have been involved in making the decision to postpone the elections on grounds of security fears for some of the staff, that commission is broken and is no longer sitting together. The law is very clear, as was interpreted in the Supreme Court ruling during the BBI acrimony, that the business of the commission needs to be conducted in a coherent manner. That was not the case when this decision was made by Chebukati. It is quite clear it is a one-man show at the IEBC.
Okay, quite interesting. Mr. Judge, you have anything maybe to add on this before we move to the...
I just want to give you a click.
Yes.
When Musando was killed, IT director, IEBC, when Chebukati was making an announcement of who won, he didn't mention that. Why would he now mention people who are injured and nobody has even seen them get injured? We have not heard even reports from the media. You see, Chebukati is working to some master. He's a worker to some master. And that could be the person who decided that even a loser in an interview so competitive like that could be the winner. So what we need to do, we need to create some laws in our system governing those ills done in our electoral system to be such severe that whoever breaks one, like now Chebukati, like Chiloba the other time, like Kivu to those days, could face the law, because that is crime, my friend. Look at it this way. During Kivutu's time, do you know how many people died? During Chebukati's time, do you know how many people have died? Just because of one man who is misusing the powers. We need some ways of putting people in line such that when you make a mistake, you know you are facing the hangman. Because this, we cannot accept this anymore.
Somebody needs to take responsibility.
Okay, quite interesting. Let me just ask you this as a lawyer. Is there does the Constitution envisage some provisions actually that maybe if at all someone has been involved in electoral malpractices, then he or she should be accountable, and then to what extent? Even as we move to the next question, to the next issue.
Yes, we have laws that provide for election offences. We have the Election Offences Act, which clearly defines offences which can be committed by election officials and the manner in which they are supposed to be dealt with. In 2013, I think we saw an issue with the CEO, Oswago, and I think he underwent the judicial process. So we have laws. And what I don't agree with my colleague is us saying that it is about Chebukati.
It's
We
okay,
have
it's okay.
officials
Okay,
right from the chair
we will
to
come
the
to
lowest.
that. We will come to that. But of course, I want us to move to another issue. There is the petition. There is a Supreme Court showdown that is actually looming. It's around the corner, and the Raila Odinga declared in his capacity as a presidential candidate that the declaration of Ruto as president-elect was null and void. Well, my question is, what are the grounds? What are some of the grounds that actually I, as Azimio Umoja One Kenya Alliance, will use to maybe petition?
Yes, indeed. The law is very clear again that Chebukati is actually the presidential returning officer.
Yes.
And he has the mandate to actually announce the president-elect. But this is from a result of tallying the votes. And this tallying was being conducted at the National Tallying Center and being forwarded to the commission, then the commission to agree on the generating their Form 34C, upon which now Chebukati would go out and announce or delegate the announcements. But that is the business of the commission, I believe. And the law is very clear on the quorum that should conduct the business of the commission. Business of the commission is not just in the boardroom. The meaning of Chebukati being the presidential or the national presidential returning officer does not mean that he handles things in some sort of hegemony and dictatorship. It was supposed to be a process. At what point did he find the four commissioners very useful that the likes of Sherera and the team were always announcing the results? And at some point when the votes were clearly
So what are actually the points, the stable
yes,
grounds?
that's what I was getting to, Eugene.
Yes.
The discordance in the system, in the process, the way it was conducted from beginning to the end was not consistent. And at some point, it became a one-man show. What drove that? Did they abscond their duty or were they kicked out? What drove that? Number two, there is a lot of discordant results between the presidential and the positions of other county level elective posts. That there was a lot of differences between what came out of them. There are huge vote gaps where the presidency is getting more votes by even 100,000 votes in some counties and all that. There is then the process of the commission disagreeing on the same process. There is then the claims that there were the Kim's kit recorded less number of votes than the total number of votes cast in a particular county where Kim's kit were not recorded to have failed. Because for us to go manual, we have to get the commission approval to go manual after confirming and validating the failure of the Kim's kit. Where that was not called for, where Kim's kit never failed, we still have counties reporting more votes than the system, than the digital or biometric system did. Such small issues, of course we wouldn't know all of them because then we would be respondents in the case. But such small issues, if the Supreme Court is very clear on ensuring the cause of justice and get this thing of spending 44.6 billion shillings and then telling Kenyans, kubali yaishe, let's get this over with because everyone is tired, yada yada. You know, you cannot spend that amount of money and then you're too tired to get back to it.
Okay. Let me just get back to George. George, from your own perspective, do you believe that these grounds will hold actually going further?
Two ways.
Or do you even have some other sentiments? Because
Two ways.
Yes.
One way would be if the courts are not compromised, there is enough ground to hold. If they are not, I mean, if they are, then it will be very hard. Because, you know, I mean, this is our country. We have been here. We know how cases go and how they end. Sometimes we are told, and we are when we are told of what the outcome is, the police is already there waiting for us with tear gas and guns. So I'm looking to a situation where, because I know that the battery of lawyers that Azimio has are very qualified and so good. They are intellectuals, you know. And what they are going to present, like last time, You know, people said that there were no grounds, but then we had never seen the server. We had never had, leave alone seeing, we had never had that somebody even sneaked in that room and opened the server and came out and said, hey guys, I saw it, it's there. And, you know, so even right now, I know that system is going to be checked because there is a word going around of people who hacked the system. So if they hacked, then who are they?
Okay.
And
let me be the devil's advocate and ask you this, that you're talking about, or you believe that, or so that the system might be checked. Actually, what makes you believe that this time round it's going to be checked? And further, you see, if it has to be checked, then it will then mean that there is a system that is, or an establishment that supported Baba's or Raila's presidency. And if at all there is the system with him, and of course, as we all know, there's a mantra that goes around that the system does not miss its target. And if it misses, then it is by design. Will it mean that there is a secret card the system is waiting to unleash?
In as much as we know that the law provides for the use of manual and digital materials, Chebukati went in records to announce that we are not going to use the manual. The law provides so. And even those who align themselves and say that they are more law-abiding were mouthpieces of IEBC, self-declared spokespersons of IEBC when they were fighting in rallies of sasa yule mtu wa kitendawili anataka kufanya hivi na IEBC. Until the court ruled that this is what the law is saying. Chebukati is a lawyer. He didn't even know that.
Okay.
And why was he, if you want to see that it was by design, why was he insisting that we had to use only digital, and then the digital one goes to fail in many places, and at some point people hack into it. It was designed, even those hackers, I'm very sure, he deployed them to hack. Yeah.
Okay, let me come to you, Masu, because actually, before I come to you, Mr. Naibei, Masu, every electionary period actually we are experiencing misery killings, and of course, as it has been mentioned earlier, these misery killings might be the voter or maybe a certain politician, or even in this extent, or like in 2022, we have seen an IBC worker. What does this tell us? Is it something that we should be worried about going forward?
Well, elections are volatile moments. And the officials who are tasked with conducting it are literally putting their lives on the board to undertake this. Just like we see referees in football being attacked, it is something that we will have to continue campaigning against for as long as this country exists. Don't think that it is a problem that will just end tomorrow or today. Apart from that, I wanted just to mention this concerning this entire election. If the fridge is smelly, the meat is rotten. Okay? If you open the door of your fridge and unasikia harufu, whatever is inside there has gone bad. And this is what IBC has shown us. There are other strategic partners of this country who, in my belief, and this I want to tell to Kenyans out there, that there are a certain cabal of individuals and heads of government who are out to fix our elections every round to their outcomes. We saw some of them giving communicas 3 days to the elections, warning the citizens not to go to some areas of this country, as if they knew the results of this election and that there would be chaos erupting in those areas. The same people sent a Democratic senator to this country yesterday and was received. And this senator has asked the sitting government not to interfere with the electoral process. They have given the process a clean bill of health and have asked Mr. Odinga to accept the outcomes. And you know, when I say asked, it is not asked as it be. Because these are the same people who forced us to wear masks like sheep, telling us there's corona and people are dying. And when they realized that we're not dying, we were left to our own means. These are the same people that forced us to take jabs and booster jabs until our government could not afford to go into their pockets any longer to sustain these jabs. And now that corona is not killing us anymore, they have nothing else to tell us except come here and tell Mr. Odinga not to go to court. These cabal of individuals, well, in our position as Kenya, we are still a young democracy. We do not have the statecraft and the military will to go against them.
Okay.
But sometimes I would just ask them kindly, if they have any humanity in them, please leave Kenyans alone. Don't interfere with our process. If there is an interference even in that electronic system,
Yes.
then I would be highly convinced that they have something to do with it.
Okay.
Otherwise, they would not warn their citizens 3 days to the elections to keep off Kisumu.
Okay. Thank you so much. Let me get to you, Naibei. There's also another issue that was actually touched earlier on, and that is the issue of rebel commissioners, which was touched by Naibei. What does it mean to the petition case against IEBC by Azimio la Umoja? And another issue is, what are the possible outcomes for the presidential petition, even going forward? Can it go to the extent even of nullifying the whole election process?
Well, first, let me quickly respond to an issue raised by my friend. This election has been given a clean bill of health, even by election observer groups like ELOG, who conducted their own process of tallying, and they confirmed the figures. Apart from that, there are different organizations who have done the same. So the government of the United States came in after, long after the process had ended and it had become clear who is the winner. So we can't really say that they had an interest and they were coming to push a given position. About what is going to the Supreme Court, I believe that this election this time round was won at the ballot, at the polling station. It was won and lost at the polling station. And this time round, the issue of servers, because it became a great issue in the 2017 presidential election petition. One of the reasons the Supreme Court nullified that election was because IEBC was in contempt of a court order directing it to open servers and to allow court officials in company of the parties in court to look at them and to give back a report. That was one of the reasons. This time round, I don't think we will have an issue with servers because documents were put in public. From the statement read by the Honorable Raila Odinga, of course you could see that the main ground for challenging this election is the absence of the 4 commissioners, the lack of consensus by the commissioners. Well, this is an issue that the Supreme Court will have to render itself on. But previously, in the BBI case, the Supreme Court was clear that 3 commissioners were enough for IEBC to be seen to be running. 3 commissioners constitute enough quorum for IEBC. But again, it doesn't mean that it is bound by that decision. The petitioner will have a burden of convincing the Supreme Court to depart from its own previous decision. And I think that will be a huge task, considering that the same lawyers who supported BBI and who are defending BBI up to the Supreme Court pushed that position until the Supreme Court agreed with them. The other reason that I'm seeing, I think from today, it is now coming out again that the petition will be about asking the court for a recount and maybe a scrutiny. I think that now will be a game changer. If Azimio will be able to garner to gather enough evidence in form of Form 34Bs from those polling stations where there are issues, enough for them to convince the Supreme Court to give an order for a recount, and the same are counted, and we find that maybe William Ruto did not pass the 50% plus 1 mark, then that will be it. But about the issue, if the issue is about the 4 commissioners, I don't see I don't see the petition succeeding.
Okay.
That is my personal opinion.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. We're going for another short break, but of course we're coming back to discuss and delve deeply into this conversation. Well, this is GBS TV, and this is The Insight.
Everywhere, GBS.
Thank you for staying with the broadcast. This is The Insight, and of course, we are at GBS TV. We continue the conversation on the politics of transition. And this goes to you, Mr. Nelson Kamau. Well, we're experiencing an electoral stalemate, bearing that there's a looming Supreme Court showdown. And that is actually slowing the transition. How is it affecting or impacting on the economy of Kenya, bearing the uncertainties of certain sectors which have not yet stabilized since the elections? And this is actually a trend. It's not even the first time that we are experiencing such stalemate after every election. What can we do, and actually what is its implications?
Thank you so much. I think Kenya is a laissez-faire kind of economy, free market economy, and the largest economy in the East and Central African region, and the 6th largest in Africa. So this being the gateway to also the international community, to the African continent, especially the Great Lakes region, I can say that anything that leads to speculative slowdown or gives speculative reasons for slowdown of business and economic activity hurts the economy.
Okay.
Right now, while we are happy, we're seeing traffic, we're seeing schools have reopened and all that, there's a great bit of the economy that is still on hold as traders speculate on the Supreme Court, the impending Supreme Court proceedings and the possible outcomes. There's that part of the economy that will remain held back until when we solve our own political stalemate. And this is going to lead to more job losses if it escalates. It's going to lead to more corporate downturn in terms of profiteering for the year in which this electoral process has happened for so many corporations, because we're talking about 2 to 3 months of loss because so many corporations started slowing down even before the elections, a month or two before, and obviously now a month or two after, if you're going to have a rerun or anything. So this legal redress of the electoral malpractices by the Supreme Court is going to cost us a great deal of our GDP or the national productivity. This cake, though, can be recouped if the incoming government sort of synergizes various sectors through, the much promised social safety nets, where money is going to be distributed to the poor and to certain sectors of the economy. There will be tax rebates in certain sectors. There will be import windows to allow multinational players in Kenya, especially for the FMCGs, to escalate their business and recover from losses. You know, the injections made to the economy, for example, during the COVID, to help the economy recover. If there's going to be that, we can recover to some extent. But as at now, a lot of the economy is on hold, and what you're seeing is the bare minimums. Schools have to reopen, so the person who sells uniform has to be there. The person who sells the kids food, the person who grows the kales for the children has to be there. Petrol station attendants have to be on place. But there's a great bit of the manufacturing, the flight of capital to regional economies where, organizations with regional offices have decided to fully operationalize those ones as they hold on, wait and see on the Kenyan economy.
Okay. Before I come to the president of the downtrodden, let me ask you, Mr. George, actually as an active citizen, because you are, how does it impact on a normal mwananchi, and what actually can be done from the side of a normal mwananchi to ensure that their economy is actually stable, even from the side, so that they don't continue crying from these electoral standoffs?
Right now, if I look at the current happenings and what we are just coming out of, like after the COVID-19, right now even the government herself is having her hands just tied at the back. There is no, I don't see anyone going to do anything that is going to be meaningful as of now because of where the attention is. Right now, everyone is attending to who is going to be who. And even if you bring huge talks, there are some economic languages that may come around, and big words which will just bombard the minds of people. But I'm telling you that in the pockets of people, we are still going to be, in fact, we are going to take close to 1 year before we realize any meaningful change on our tables and in our pockets. Yeah.
Mr. George says we are, actually it will take even a year for the economy to be a bit stable. As a Secretary General of Vijana Economic Front, because I believe it's an economic forum. Yeah, so more than political. What actually can we do as a nation, be it from the political side or even the citizens?
Yes, even as you mentioned that more than political.
Yes.
I think more so political.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Okay, quite interesting. But generally, what can we do to ensure that we have a stable economy despite the electoral standoffs?
First of all, we must capitalize on the factors of production. And whoever will be chosen as president after this entire process is finished and sworn in must find a way of galvanizing the entire nation into one economic bloc that moves as a unit. This means that no area in this country must be left to lag behind. There's a reason why people in some areas of this country are so much incensed with the thought of actually getting power, because these are the people who have been left at the bottom of the independence pot. When
the white man left our country to be free to rule itself, one of the major causes of fallout was the economic segregation that happened across the nation. Presidents from President Kenyatta Senior to President Moi, they deliberately left some sectors of this country, such as the western region of the country, to their own means. The government, despite being a laissez-faire economy, like my friend here said, the government always has a role to boost commerce.
Okay.
Because even if you go to countries which boast of capitalism like US, you see big companies like Tesla, the government is giving them money. Yes, the government is giving them money to do business, and through that, they are dominating the world.
Okay.
So our local companies, I don't think they are benefited enough from what the other, the previous regimes have had.
Okay.
And that is why I was opposed to the bottoms-up economic model, because the government must look at the macro elements of the economy and tap them to the maximum. If you promote the large enterprises, you expand the scope of job building. If every mamamboga is given money to launch their mamamboga docket everywhere across the country, there will be everyone selling mboga and no one buying mboga. Okay? So even William Ruto knows that. So I'm very sorry to you Kenyans that you are hoodwinked, you are lied to. But even despite the fact that you are lied to, we hope that if it is Raila Odinga, if it is William Ruto, at the end of this entire process, let them galvanize the nation, let them put their focus on the macro elements of economic improvement. Uhuru Kenyatta did fine. Infrastructure is good. There is electricity. Let them put in now the stimulus packages that they promised. Let us see more people being supported by the government to do business. Let us see tax breaks for the youth in this country, those youths who are entering entrepreneurship. Let us see an industrial setup in Kenya. We are so much into consumerism. We are more focused on the prices of what we consume than how we can actually expand our production. So let agriculture expand. There are some areas in this country that are known to be the food basket, like the Rift Valley region. They are focusing more on politics. Can the president shift their focus back to production?
Quite interesting. Naibei, you've heard what he has actually said, and to him, whoever becomes the president after this standoff actually has a greater mandate and responsibility to ensure that we have a stable economy, regardless whether we have another standoff maybe in the future. But now my question is, the president-elect is William Ruto. Supposedly he remains in that seat and becomes the president. Judging from his politics or even economic ideals and what actually believes, even from the manifesto, what kind of an economy do we expect generally from a Ruto presidency?
First, I want to concur with my colleagues about the state of our economy and what needs to be done. What we are not saying is that the reason, one of the biggest contributors to the stability and the growth of our economy henceforth is this peaceful election that we have had. And this election was peaceful mainly because of the transparent nature that it was. The situation is not as grim as it was in 2017. It is not as bad as it was in 2013 or even 2007. This time round, Kenyans are settled. In fact, if you looked at mainstream media reports for the last 3 days, businesses have resumed at lowest levels, and Kenyans are somehow moving on. About the presidency of William Ruto, I must admit that I'm equally apprehensive about the bottom-up economic model and how it was presented to us, because 2 days ago a friend of mine called me from Nyanza, telling me that now that Ruto is likely to take over this government, he is planning to open a kiosk for her mom so that they find a way of benefiting from Ruto's government. And if you try to interrogate the bottom-up economic model, most Kenyans didn't understand it, and it was not clear what it meant. So that now we are not sure whether this 50 billion is going to be distributed to border borders, mama mbogas directly to increase the number of vibandas and to increase the number of border borders. We are not sure. But I'm hopeful that this was a political slogan.
Okay.
It was a political theme meant to gain votes.
Okay.
I want to believe that William Ruto is wise enough and he will do the right thing in terms of coming up with sound economic policies that will work for this nation.
Well, you have something?
Yes, I think for the last 15 years, William Samoei Ruto, the winning contender, has been in government and executive for that matter. The lowest position he has held is the Ministry of Agriculture, I think, and Education. And he has risen up to be a deputy president for 10 years. There are comparisons, or a point of comparison we can make here. We can juxtapose William Ruto's performance with that of Matiang'i, Fred Matiang'i, the Interior Secretary, or that of C.S. Magoha, Education, or that of other secretaries in the past, ministers like Honorable Karisa Maitha, the late, and the late John Mishuki. You can compare their performance and the drama they had or did not have in their reign in the ministries they had, vis-a-vis what William Ruto has taken us, the orchestra he has taken us for the last 10 years especially. There is no particular item you can tag William Ruto to, because he has disowned everything His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta has been doing. William Ruto has disowned everything that has contributed to a point of expenditure, and he has demonized the loans, which as an economist I can tell you he's going to need, because our fiscal policy is not very stable at the moment. So his performance in the past, and now you're being told that he did not perform, or he performed dismally because he wasn't president, and he himself said, I was not president that time. I will show you what I can do as president. John Mishuki did not need to be president to do the good or the bad that he did. Karisa Maitha the same. Fred Matiang'i the same. You have seen Mutahi Kagwe leading the country in and out of COVID waves. Whether you agree with him or not, he was also a victim of the excuse me, of the mafia house scandals and whatnot. And whether you agree with him or not, C.S. Magoha has really tried, including the bold step of rolling out CBC and trying to be at the same spectrum of countries like the United States and others. So you do not need to be president to do those things. In actual sense, what I'm saying is that William Ruto has not set a precedent that he could be a performer.
Okay. Quite interesting. Let me just ask this generally. You see, we've talked about Ruto's government, what it will mean to the economy of Kenya. Now we just want to ask Mr. George, because you know, just based on the economic policies of Raila Amolo Odinga and his track record or his beliefs generally, economically, what do you think are Raila's government? Because there's a possibility of him ascending to the top seat still. What do you actually foresee a Raila presidency will mean to the economy of Kenya?
Before I talk about Raila's maybe view of how it's going to look like, can I just say also my fear in the way we do our campaigns and who is behind us when we are campaigning. And if you see the trend of our campaigns from, let me not go very far away, but just 2002 up to now, you will realize that the major contenders, number one, are backed by people from their village, from their tribes, from their communities. And this has a very great meaning in the kind of a leadership that is coming in. It means that when we get it all. And you are there to work for us or beg us to get what you need to get. And that kind of campaign hasn't stopped yet. It is still here with us. So I'm still fearing that even those people may have very great slogans and good manifestos, to be discussed and such like. Look at where they campaign and the messages they bring in their backyards against those who are against them. So then it will advise you on where the economy of a country is going and how it will look like when the fruition is.
Okay.
So then now let's talk about Raila Odinga. Just as it has been mentioned of the great Michukis and Karisa Maidas, I mean, Raila is somebody who has performed whether he's in government or not. I mean, for us to get a constitution, Raila was not part of the government, he was not a minister, he was an outsider. He was not getting any fundings from the government. He was a nobody.
Okay.
But then his insistence and his performance, his energy brought what we are enjoying today, which maybe those who would be the bigger beneficiaries opposed to the maximum.
Okay.
And leave alone that, when he was in the Ministry of Housing, we know what Raila did. When he was in the Ministry of Roads, we know what he did. I mean, this is somebody who's, we can just say that we don't like history, so that we don't go where we want. But you see, if we may think bigger and say that Kenya, when we are electing a president, we should really not hold any big celebrations for somebody's win, because that is a son of Kenya. And even though our differences in opinions have put us in this, I'm not going to really mourn or celebrate as if there was a duel between Arsenal and Manchester United, where somebody after a loss, somebody hangs himself on a tree to die. It should not go to that direction, because we should be all gainers in anyone who becomes a president. So when I hear rhetorics of people saying that I will not do handshakes, I will not do, you see, those are threats to peace, and those are threats to development, because even the people that you are not going to shake their hands, you will need them to pay taxes. And those are the taxes you are promising people to use to give them so that we can develop our country.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ndawa. And I think our time is, my director tells me that we have come short of time. Well, I want to give you just time to make your, of course, closing remarks. But of course, as you make your closing remarks, let me start with you, Mr. Naibei. Women have involved themselves in 2022 elections, and actually, in a very unprecedented way, we have seen many women being elected in elective posts, of course, in 2022, having for the first time 7 governors, women. What do you make of this, even as you make your closing remarks? What does it mean to our democratic space?
Well, I think the fact that we have a higher number of women in elective positions this time proves that we don't really need those to emphasize affirmative action measures. Rather, we need to make the process free and fair. If we make the election process free, fair and transparent, we give all genders equal opportunities, because these women contested in nominations and they won. And I think one of them from Meru won on an independent ticket, if I'm not wrong. It shows that we are growing, and the laws that we enacted after the 2010 Constitution we are seeing the fruits. About just one issue about Raila Odinga, I liked his sentiments when he said that he will shake hands whether he wins or whether he loses. That was a patriotic statement that shows a man who loves this country. But I'm also worried that if he's the one to take over the leadership of this country, he is a captured man. This time round, we don't have the Raila Odinga that we had previously. He is captured in the sense that, of course, he was the candidate of the outgoing president, who is also the chair of Azimio. So we are not likely to see him exercise and perform his functions as effectively as he would have done if he was a candidate that was independent and the Raila that we knew. Otherwise, I think Kenyans have conducted themselves peacefully, and this is a milestone that we need to celebrate. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let me go to you, Mr. Mdawa, because there's an issue I wanted them to touch. It's quite different from women. And you, as you give us your closing remarks about women indulging themselves in politics a lot. What is your closing remarks with that?
I see in the next 3 elections from now, men will cry that they need affirmative support to get into parliament. I saw the example in Nakuru, and I think there is an encouragement right now, there is an energy that has been, that women has demonstrated that is going to bring sanity, and I'm very glad that they are coming in, because I've never seen women campaigning in such kind of a militant kind of rhetorics that men take into their campaigns. When men come out of campaigns, the people in the areas that they go to come out hating the other people, such that they don't feel like we are the same Kenyans anymore. And that is an element that women are going to bring in. And just to finish with this, I was having great hopes somehow that the level of tribalism was going to be lowered to a certain level whereby the next generation will come and wipe it out completely. And I saw the number of Mount Kenya votes to Raila Amolo Odinga, overwhelmingly more than I have ever seen that. They voted Raila over 600,000, which had never happened in history. So I think if we keep going to this direction, we are going to have a blended country where people can sit down and discuss, not because of the basis of which community you come from. Because it's so naive for somebody who has gone to a university with 5 degrees, he's a professor and a lawyer, going back to tell his people that this community, I don't know which class they were in and who were their teachers.
Thank you so much. I'll come to you, Mr. Nelson, even as you make your closing remarks, and just on the same issue that he has talked about, as you make your closing remarks, he has talked about tribalism from afar. And my question is, over 60 years after independence, we have 2 tribes that are ruling Kenya. Is this something that is worrying Kenyans, and what does this mean to Kenya's democracy?
Yes, indeed, Eugene. This ping pong between the Kikuyu and the Kalenjin community needed to end. Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta saw the need for that because it actually affects the way people articulate national matters. It affects our culture. It affects our international appeal. Believe you me, there are organizations that cannot come to Kenya. There are individual businessmen and women who cannot come to Kenya because of our toxic tribalism, negative ethnicity. We need to get this over with in terms of implementing various tenets of the Constitution that call for affirmative action, that call for equality, that seek to enhance equalization, even in the way devolution is executed. However, when you look at how we conduct ourselves at county level, the subnational level, devolution is done in such a tribalistic manner. You cannot see a competent Kikuyu CEC in Kisumu, and you cannot see a competent Luo CEC in Uasin Gishu. We need to start from the basics and accept that tribalism affects us negatively. However, because of nepotism, tribalism becomes stronger, and it affects us in the economy, the culture, in our international appeal. And that is negative ethnicity. Now, there is an emerging culture where we expect to end tribalism by growing our urban areas, where one day we will have a Luo governor in Nakuru or a Kikuyu governor in Mombasa. That is a very slow process of accepting that we are cursed with tribalism. It cannot end unless the current generation dies. We can overcome that. It has been done before. In closing, I would like to say that the various candidates, especially the two who are likely to get it, if depending on how the Supreme Court takes this, assuming that Azimio is going to file within the requisite timelines, both candidates sort of made very good promises. But as an economist, I would like to say something about the Kenya Kwanza wing of the already declared winner, William Ruto, His Excellency, the Deputy President, that he combined two very obnoxious things that I found to be an oxymoron. He combined an expansionary fiscal policy where he promised people he would spend money on them and grow the economy. At the same time, he demonized debt and various ways of collecting revenues by government, especially promising tax breaks and exemptions for the poor and the middle MSMEs. Therefore, he combined an expansionary fiscal policy and fiscal consolidation in one sentence, and that's an oxymoron. That is the only thing I hoped I would flag. But in retrospect, I'd like to warn Kenyans with benefit of hindsight that do not expect any performance from a Kenya Kwanza administration. Just expect a continuum of the Jubilee administration.
Give us your closing remarks, even as you touch on this last issue that actually is mentioned about the tribalism.
In fact, I want to address something that Mr. Naibe said before we came here. As I close, the sheep cannot bite the herdsman. In fact, if it happens, it is news and it is reported. I have never had such news ever since I was born. I grew up herding goats and sheep and cows. Don't tell us that Raila has been captured. You lack the capacity to talk on behalf of who captures who when it comes to Raila and the government. Because if, for lack of better words, I would say Raila is the individual who captured the government by its balls for a very long time and ensured that Kenyans got what they deserved from the process. So if Raila could capture Uhuru and Ruto when they were together, what makes you think that Uhuru Kenyatta would come and capture Raila? Uhuru has served as president in his term very peacefully, and Raila would be Raila as a president. And we believe that if he is president, he would execute some of the issues that have always emerged to fracture us. He asked in one of his campaigns that when I endorsed Mwai Kibaki, didn't I know he was a Kikuyu? Okay? When I shook hands with Moi, didn't I know he was a Kalenjin? So he united us, and we believe the presidency of his would unite us. Unity spurs economic development. And as a result, I'm still hopeful of the process, whatever comes of it. But if William Ruto ends up with power, then let it be. But I want to assure Kenyans that we will be there for you. We will try as much as possible to help you, and God will bless us.
Okay, Mercy. Thank you, gentlemen, for accepting my invite once again. And of course, it has been indeed a very elaborate discourse where we have been engaged wholly in issues that are actually affecting Kenyans. I hope to call you again so that we can discuss further on issues that are developing. For you, our viewers back at home, we are so grateful that you have stayed tuned with us throughout this conversation, the transition, the politics of transition throughout, and we're very grateful. Join us every Friday, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m., where we discuss and delve deeply into politics through the eyes of different stakeholders, like we have had today. Well, my name is Eugene Ochienkwach, and I wish you a very great night. On behalf of everyone who has made this a success, do have a blessed night. Thank you.